Hi everybody. I am Lauren Collister. I am research engagement manager. That's my title of Invest in Open Infrastructure. And I am one of our power users of CiviCRM at IOI. As I mentioned in our notes doc, I cannot stop talking about how useful this tool is. And so I'm glad to have another opportunity to talk about it and how we use it as just one example. And I also want to say a huge thanks to my colleague at IOI, Emmy, who is an even more power user than I am and who put together some of these slides and trained me how to use Civi. And she's also a member of this community, I believe, from time to time. So if you ever see Emmy around, you can talk Civi with her as well. Okay, so uh, we use Civi through as Katie just mentioned CiviCRM Spark, which is that um, it's the hosted version of CiviCRM. We do pay a monthly subscription, and they do all of our upgrades. They manage our extensions. Um, it's really helpful for us because they take care of all those things on the back end, so we don't have to keep up with that. We can also support through our subscription, the continual development of this software tool through the service, which is really great. But it does have some limitations. So we cannot really customize our instance as much as you possibly can for an open source software platform. If we were hosting it all by ourselves, we could do all kinds of things, but as it stands now, we cannot. And we can't use all the extensions that are available because we have to get them through the hosting service. So that's just a couple of limitations to that. It's a trade-off, as you all probably are familiar with. CRM is a customer relationship management or a client relationship management. C can stand for all kinds of things, but basically it's a relational database that we use to keep track of who is in our community, how they've engaged with us, what kinds of things that they've attended, and how we have interacted with them. I'm going to just go to the next here. At IOI, Invest in Open Infrastructure, we use Civi for a number of things, and we also deliberately don't use Civi for some things. We use it primarily for logging interactions with our external stakeholders. That's like emails that we send, meetings that we have. That's the minimum that we use. And the reason for this is because um, I don't know if folks here have experienced this, but you meet somebody at a conference, you have a great chat with them, and then you go back and you say, "Wow, I met this person at a conference. I had a great chat with them." And then everybody in your team is like, "Oh yeah, we all know this person and we all had chats with them and we're totally familiar with them." And you're like, "Oh well, I didn't know any of that. How am I supposed to know?" And the answer to how you're supposed to know is use Civi because ideally, at least for IOI, we would be logging all those interactions in Civi and sharing how we've interacted with them and where we've met up with them before. It's also useful for sort of institutional memory. For example, like my predecessor in my role did a lot of interaction and community engagement. And so I can follow up on some of those and look back and see what they did, even though they no longer work at IOI. I can kind of go back and see, like, here's part of a relationship that has already been built. It's this sort of institutional memory that it's really useful for capturing in this way. Another thing that we do, and I know Yo also will show you this, I think, is we use it for managing our events. So if we have a public event, we use it to have a registration page. We use it to send out the reminders and the Zoom link and all that stuff for our events. We also use it to send mass mailings. So for example, our newsletter that we send out comes through Civi, and I'll just kind of show the email interface as well. And we also have the ability to log individual emails with Civi using a blind carbon copy BCC feature. So we have an email address that we can add as a BCC to any message that we send. It's a Civi email address and it'll automatically log that email. So if I'm sending an email to a few people who participated in a research project and saying, thank you for your participation, I can BCC that Civi and then it'll be logged in our system automatically for all those folks, knowing that, hey, they actually participated, they got a thank you. And so then other folks can see, oh, these folks participated in our research study. And that's very useful, right? At IOI, we don't use Civi for things like pipeline management. So this is where we're trying to get, somebody to donate or become a member, a sustaining circle member. And so you have a kind of first introduction and then like several conversations, and then there's like maybe a contract, all these things. We don't really use it for that. We use Airtable for this. We don't use it to take notes for calls that we're having. So we do log the meetings, but we don't use it for taking notes because as you'll see in a second, I'm going to show you a demo. It's a little clunky. We use Google Docs for that, and we will put a link in Civi as well. We don't use it to send individual emails because it's just a big hassle. It's much easier to just use your Gmail to do that. We also don't use it for assigning tasks and follow-ups, even though it does have that capability. I think, you might have a little bit of that in your talk later, but we prefer using Asana for that, just organizational preference. So I mentioned that Civi helps us track the people in our community and our engagement. So there are some basic, what we call entities in Civi. And I'll show you what these look like in just a second. I'm going to show you our live Civi. So it's going to be kind of a fun time, live demo, nothing like a live demo. Um, in Civi, you can have contacts. So these can be an individual like Lauren Collister or an organization like Invest in Open Infrastructure. So that way you can also see relationships between those entities. So you can say, oh, look, Lauren Collister works for Invest in Open Infrastructure. Then you can click on Invest in Open Infrastructure and see, oh, these other people also work for Invest in Open Infrastructure. There are activities, many types that include emails back and forth, calls or meetings, research activities, people who've done peer reviews on our papers, things like this. All kinds of activities, webinar participation. These can be assigned to individuals. We'll see an example of that in a second. And then there are events that we host with those sign up links and the people who registered and participated in that event. There are a lot of other things, but we rarely use them at IOI. And so I can't really talk very much about them, but I will show you some of the things that we do use. So let me just pull up my notes to make sure I get all of the demo parts that I want to make sure I share with you. And then I'll pull up a Civi screen so you can actually see it. Okay. So here's my Civi dashboard. I know you can customize this with different views of different things that are going on. I don't have anything live and active right now, so it's not very exciting. But I do want to show you how I might use this. So say I get an email from Katie Pratt, and I've already asked Katie if it's okay if I can share her. So don't worry, I have permission from Katie to do this. So if I'm like, oh, who is Katie Pratt? Do we know her? I might search for her, and I'm going to search for her name, and it shows that we have her in our database. And so if I click it, I see her individual profile, like that contact card for Katie here. And I can see, oh, she works for Center for Scientific Collaboration and Community Engagement. I can see her job title. I can see her email address. So say, yes, okay, so we do know this person. There's a lot of other information in here. We just do not collect it, but you can collect it if that's important to your organization. It's just not something that we want to have on hand. We don't really need it. So I mentioned that I can see that she has a relationship. So I see here is the employee of CSCCE, and I can even click on that, and I can look and see more about CSCCE if I want, and I can click on this relationships to see the other people who work for there if I want to, which I will go back because it just looks just like this. And then I can see, oh wow, look, there are 6 activities over here related to Katie. And I can go there and I can click and see, okay, so clearly somebody at my organization has interacted with Katie before. And I can go and look and see, okay, what do we know? And I can actually see, oh, look, there's an email. So this is the email that Katie sent to me asking me to do this tools trial. Look at that. How amazing. But you can imagine that if I were one of my colleagues or maybe a new employee, I could say, oh, yeah, okay, Lauren knows Katie. Lauren has been in contact. Lauren has done things for their organization. I can also see that Katie and I, about a couple of years ago now, had a meeting about InfoFinder, which is a tool that I was working on as part of my community engagement fundamentals course. So we meet and I can show you what that activity looks like, that activity type. I can view it. I can see when it happened, how long it took, and then I past me helpfully linked to the notes doc that I took for this meeting, where Katie provided some feedback on the tool that we were building, which was really helpful. So I can go read this if I wanted to, find out what we talked about. And I can also see that Katie participated in a webinar that we had way back in the day, that was actually recorded by a predecessor of mine here. So these folks no longer work for IOI, but they logged this interaction. So I can see that there's this long history of interaction at IOI. So this is one of the most useful things I have found about Civi. So let's see, what else did I want to show you? I want to show you about mailings a little bit. So we do use Civi for mailings. We use it for our both our newsletter that we send out as well as sort of group mailing. So if we have a group of people, say, participating in a particular project or a study, we will create a group for that and mail them this way. So I can show you there are two types of mailings. There is new mailing and new mailing traditional. Let's look at traditional first. This is a little bit more like the kind of thing you would see um, in like any sort of communication infrastructure here. You can set it to be from. I'm not going to click this down button here because then you'll see everybody's email address at my organization. But basically, you can have it be from you, from me, Lauren, or you can have it be from a general email address. But this is one of the drawbacks of the hosted infrastructure, in my opinion, is that it has to come from a CiviCRM email address. Otherwise, it'll get like flagged as spam and it'll get blacklisted and all kinds of bad things will happen. So when people receive our newsletter or a mass email from me written using one of these tools, it comes from Lauren at investinopen.civicrm.org or whatever, some gobbledygook, not my usual Lauren at investinopen.org email address. So that is, one drawback. That mismatch of email addresses has actually caused me a small problem in the past where my messages have been flagged as spam. So I have been marked as spam. I'm not proud of it, but I am apparently it is that mismatch where your email provider knows that you usually get email from this person at another email address, and so this one looks sketchy. So that is one of the drawbacks. That is one of the reasons why we prefer to use our Gmail and then use that BCC feature to log the email in Civi. But for something like a newsletter, works way better because you can whitelist the newsletter or whatever. So you can add a subject, you can write your email, you can even, this is very helpful, you can send a test email to yourself or to a colleague to make sure it looks nice. And then what happens is it logs this email in the system for all the people who you added in this recipients area. So that means that there will be a record of this message going out to all of these folks And each person will get their own individual message. You can even customize it to draw in their name. So it could say like Dear Yo instead of Dear Colleague or something generic. So you can definitely make it a little bit more customized. And that's pretty useful in uh, trying to make it a little bit more personal. There's also a tracking option in here. We don't really use that much, but it just tracks whether people have opened the email or not. That is pretty handy. I'll show you briefly the new mailing non-traditional. I don't know what to I call one traditional and one not, but this is where you can use more design features. This is what we use for our newsletter. You can add a header, you can add nice pictures, you can format it in a certain way. We have a template that we've created that you can just apply. It's pretty nice, and then it has some additional options where you can add, tracking for clicking links and things like that in there as well, if that is of interest to you. I can actually show you what one of our newsletters looks like. I have a link here, if folks are interested in that. So yes, this is our newsletter from the end of 2025. And we formatted it using Civi's features to look like this. You can see we've got some images, we've got little buttons that you can click, we've got several sections. I think it looks pretty nice. And then it has this uh, unsubscribe preferences and other things down here. So this format does allow people to click unsubscribe or to change their subscription preferences too, which is required, obviously, if you work in certain jurisdictions, but also just, you don't want to spam people. Let's see, I think those are my main ways of using Civi at IOI. I hope I have showed you some things that are interesting. I'm just going to peek at the chat to see if anybody want to ask anything here. I don't see anything to ask that I can't respond to in the chat, and maybe we can go over some other things in the Q&A, but maybe now I turn it over to Yo to share your use cases and your experience. So I'll stop my sharing